Welcome to another edition of RX Muscles Supplement and Science, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Today we're going to be talking stem cells and what their application is for people who work out, for injuries, for healing, for regeneration, and for living a long time. And joining us today is Dr. Neil Neimark. Thank you for joining us. And I hear you have a pretty interesting practice out there in Irvine, California.
Yeah. Hi, Dave. I'm out here. I do concierge medicine, so we take care of the whole person. You know, not just musculoskeletal stuff, but general health, wellness, nutritional health. We do everything from IV nutrition here to stem cells to just traditional. Hey, doc, I need a antibiotic for this bad sore throat I got.
You know, when I was in medical school, I don't know if you know my background, I went to medical school for 3 years and I dropped out. I became a little disillusioned with the fact that at the time, medicine was really just geared at treating symptoms and giving medications out for people. And it really kind of makes me happy and almost makes me regret almost maybe not being a doctor, because today the modalities have changed a lot. We're into immunotherapy now. We're actually looking to keep people healthy and regenerate them, and that's really, I think, where the future is. And you know, a lot of people are very confused about stem cells, Doc, because they don't understand the differences between the embryonic stem cells, the ones that are, you know, gotten from the cord. Give us a little education, I guess, on where stem cells come from nowadays, the ones that you can get in the U.S. versus the ones maybe that they're having down in South America and Mexico, and what the differences are between them.
Sure. And it's very confusing. So you're absolutely right. I mean, even when I first got into this field, it's very confusing. There's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. So I'll just give you the basics as I see it now. So the main stem cell we're talking about, nobody's using embryonic stem cells in the clinic. Those are research places. So they're doing tissue engineering. We don't use embryonic stem cells.
Is that because it's illegal at this point in the United States?
It's never been illegal. I mean, it's always been used in research. There was just no federal funding for it initially. So, but the key is, embryonic stem cells come from blastocysts when they're like, I don't know, a week or two of embryonic formation. I mean, really early on. Once a baby's born, if you get stem cells from the umbilical cord or the amniotic fluid, we call those adult stem cells.
Gotcha.
In the literature, those are adult stem cells. It means the human being is already formed, so there's no development, because embryonic stem cells have the potential, they're pluripotent, they have the potential to be any cell, including tumor cells and cancer cells. So the kind of cell that we're using is an MSC, mesenchymal stem cell, and it's been renamed by the guy Arnold Kaplan, the researcher at Case Western, who discovered it as a medicinal signaling cell. It's still called an MSC, but it doesn't really work as a stem cell in the body. So we think of stem cells as a cell that can divide and become itself. It can make an exact duplicate of itself, and it can also differentiate into a new kind of tissue. So it's true. In the laboratory, an MSC, in a Petri dish, you can turn an MSC into a cartilage cell, a bone cell, a muscle cell. That's all called tissue engineering. But in the body, in vivo, when we inject stem cells, when you got stem cells injected in your shoulder, I saw that the other day. I see clearly it didn't work because I saw surgery.
I feel great though with the surgery.
Oh, good. We'll talk more about that. But those MSCs in vivo, in your body, do not become other cells. They do not differentiate into new bone, new cartilage, new blood vessels. They are signaling cells. They send out signaling molecules that stimulate your body's own tissue-specific stem cells.
I see.
In areas, let's say like your shoulder that was torn up, So there are still good, what we call tissue-specific stem cells in there. Cartilage progenitor cells.
My orthopedic surgeon may beg to differ. I think I might have used those up too. I think I had nothing left.
Look, apparently you did have nothing left, although it was a very small dose of stem cells that you got, and that's another big area where you have to look at how much
damage is there. Yeah.
The number makes a difference. So, but these MSCs in your body, they stimulate your existing stem cells, which kind of get worn out in chronic areas of inflammation, to revive themselves, re-stimulate them. Sort of, it's almost like a coach. It says, hey guys, wake up, get back to work. You've fallen asleep, and we've got to get you generating new tissue.
So when you inject these mesenchymal, I don't mean to interrupt you, when you inject mesenchymal stem cells, does it affect the entire body?
So if you put it in a joint, it pretty much stays in the joint.
Okay.
If you put it in a muscle, those cells will dock around blood vessels. They're pericytes. So these cells wrap themselves around little capillary beds, and they'll live there for 3 to 4 months. And while they're living there, they can produce signaling molecules, growth factors, that will go into the systemic circulation.
Interesting.
But if we're looking for a systemic effect, we put them intravenously, or they can be put into the spinal cord. I don't do that, or directly into a disc. Here we just do intravenous or intra-articular or intramuscular in my location.
Gotcha. Who would you do intramuscular for instance?
So look, if you have a tendon injury, if you have a bad injury that's not healing, an area of chronic inflammation, stem cells are great because they're going to wake up those satellite stem cells on your muscle. They're going to start to regenerate. They're also angiogenic, so these MSCs produce VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, which creates new blood vessel formation.
Interesting.
And because these stem cells live along the blood vessels, the better the blood supply, the better the repair, the better the healing.
Interesting. Now, the article and some of the videos I've watched said that, the amount of stem cells that you need is so high that it was almost undoable. But then they found that there are cells that go along with the stem cells that will actually activate these stem cells. What's your experience with that?
So I have not seen anything clinically come down the line in terms of stem cell activators. I mean, it's a big area of discussion. People talk about it. We know certain dietary habits, intermittent fasting, paleo, keto, all those things will help stem cells to be in the circulation more. But we don't have a hold yet on true activators. There are some products that work pretty good to mobilize stem cells, but for the most part, what we say is that those stem cells, need to be I would say in a joint, you really have to have somewhere between 5 to 10 million MSCs around to do the job. Now, for systemic issues, like if you're treating an autoimmune disorder or something like that, then you're going to need 120 million stem cells, and that's prohibitive in terms of over-the-counter product. So you're right, the numbers make a difference.
I'm trying to think of the video. I can't remember the name. I should have pulled it up before we did the interview. There's a couple clinics that are using, I think they might be in Mexico, they're using stem cells and something else combined with them that are showing that these other something else's are what tell the stem cells what to do.
Okay, so I think you're talking about exosomes.
Exosomes, thank you.
So exosomes are simply little nanovesicles. They're microscopic, 50 to 150 nanometer vesicles that are those signaling molecules that stem cells produce.
Okay.
So because there's so much federal regulation on what's legal, what's not, and there's so much gray area right now, because it's a developing industry, you can get exosomes, which are an acellular product. They do not have living MSCs, but we take those little vesicles that are basically little packets of medicine and growth factors and microRNA and messenger RNA that about the size of a virus, actually, that you can put into the body. They go into the cells, they sort of take over the protein machinery and help to stimulate regeneration too. However, there's something really unique about the MSC. The MSC is an intelligent cell. So when you take an MSC and you put it in an inflamed liver, it will produce very different molecules than if you put it in an inflamed knee or even in an inflamed shoulder. MSCs have the ability to, they're data driven. So they will read, they have their sensory input. They read the local environment and then they produce these medicinal signaling molecules based on what they read.
Wow.
So when you're putting in exosomes, it's kind of a shot in the dark.
Gotcha.
To me, it has some good clinical data, but it's nothing like using a real MSC.
Okay, so now, what about combining the two together? Is that something that would work better, or it's not proven?
So no, I don't think anything's proven. Nothing in this industry is proven yet. So it's so new. I mean, we're just at the beginning of the beginning. So a lot of people are doing it. They're combining exosomes. They're combining stem cells from fat, stem cells from bone marrow. They're combining PRP and growth factor. So yeah, it's a little bit of the Wild West out there. So you got to be careful. You got to go to somebody you trust that you know is in it for the right reasons.
Okay, I have spinal cord issues, or I should say vertebral problems, like Ronnie Coleman, for instance, 8-time Mr. Olympia, who's seems like his whole spine is falling apart. He's got ruptured discs. He's got broken vertebral processes. You know, what do you do for someone like him? Do you just give him massive IVs of stem cells? How do you treat something like that?
Yeah, so IV's not going to get to those areas very well. No? I mean, spinal column is, the whole cerebral area and the spinal fluid has virtually limited blood supply.
Okay.
So you can, there are some doctors that are doing, fluoroscopic injections right into the disc space.
Right.
In the facet joint. You do it just like you do steroids. You can go right into the facet joint. Okay. You can go right into the spinal canal. You can do an intrathecal injection.
Okay.
And get those stem cells in the spinal column. Again, the data on this is tricky, and every case is individual. But sometimes you just, in certain injuries, especially if it's just facet and the spinous processes and the paravertebral musculature, you could just, we've had great results just putting stem cells right in those paravertebral muscles.
Right.
They will live in there. And remember, these stem cells, the living ones, wrap themselves around the blood vessels. They will live in that muscle for anywhere from, the data is kind of unclear, but somewhere between, a couple weeks to 4 months, and they'll continue to produce these signaling molecules that will help to heal the area. So we've had success just putting it in the muscle near the bone.
And that's my question. How often do these things need to be reapplied? Because it seems like one dose may not do it if you have a severe injury.
Yeah, so look, we don't exactly know, but one dose is not going to do it with a severe injury. It will, if it's taken decades to break down a joint or a cartilage or tissue space, it might take multiple injections. I usually tell people, look, on joints, if you don't notice anything after 3 to 6 months, we'll do a booster. If you don't notice anything 3 to 6 months after that, it's just probably not going to work in you. You could up the numbers. You can add some exosomes. You can try bone marrow instead of fat. You can do a bunch of stuff. But, for systemic conditions, it's typically we'll do an injection, infusion, IV infusion of stem cells every 3 months for 4 times.
Gotcha.
So I'll tell people, give it a year and see. So I have a weightlifter here, rheumatoid arthritis patient, and she's done incredible with the quarterly injections. Now, at a certain point, you don't need them as often.
Right. Now, how do you harvest them from the actual individual, or can you buy them? Because I noticed when I had mine done, they were purchased. They
were purchased.
Yeah. Okay. They come from a lab, and they're all loaded up. They're on ice. They're overnighted, and then they put them into my body. But I know some physicians will actually harvest them from the patients too.
Right. So what I do here we do both in the clinic here. Okay. In my office, we have, like on this bodybuilder that we did that procedure on, she had so little body fat, we couldn't go into her abdomen. We had to go into her butt, right?
Right.
So we're getting whatever fat we can from the buttocks.
Yeah.
And we got enough to send it off to be cultured and then we just order vials of her allogeneic, they're her own stem cells. Right. And one fat sample will usually give us, say, 20 to 30 doses.
Oh, wow.
And each dose is 10 million MSCs.
Wow.
Now, if you purchase over-the-counter product, if you wanted to get 10 million MSCs, that's about HCCs. You're probably looking just cost alone close to 10 to 12 grand for 10 million MSCs. Yeah. When you harvest them from your own fat, you get a lot more bang for the buck. If you're going to do repeat injections, we recommend doing that. But
my problem was I have no body fat. I have zero body fat. The doctor said there's no way I can get anything off of you. I literally don't have body fat on my body. So the only option would have been to go into my bone marrow through the hip.
Bone marrow, yeah. Then bone marrow is the solution, correct.
Which stem cells are better, the ones that are in the fat or the ones that are in bone marrow? Because I heard the bone marrow ones are more potent, but you can't get as many of them. Is that true?
Yeah, so the truth is, I mean, I've researched this subject for a long time. If you talk to the real bench scientists, the Dr. Kaplan or Neil Reardon down in Panama, they're the same. An MSC is an MSC is an MSC. Some people will argue, oh, the bone marrow is going to get you better results in a joint. Some will say, well, yeah, but there's 500 times as many stem cells in the adipose tissue as there are in the bone marrow. But the MSCs are what do the job, and it honestly doesn't matter where you get them from. You can get them from menstrual blood. You can get them from dental pulp.
Yeah, but here's a good question then. Does that mean that people who have more body fat in their body have more potential for healing because they have more stem cells in their body? Or is that not true?
Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. Because a lot of people are fat from eating too many, Pringles and Ho-Hos.
Right, but they tend to have more stem cells, you would think, that you can harvest more from them.
Yeah, but those fat cells are just loaded with toxins, and it doesn't increase the stem cell count.
Got you. Okay.
It's because fat is so vascular. And remember, MSCs are perivascular. They live around those capillary beds. So anything you do that increases blood flow, circulation, you're going to increase your stem cells.
Right. So exercise is a great way to activate stem cells in your body.
Probably the best way.
Gotcha.
I can't think of a better way. I mean, dietary things, exercise, and good, mental thinking. Because don't forget, the toxic thoughts are just as toxic as glyphosate or Roundup. So when you're thinking negative thoughts all the time, it releases these interleukin-6. It causes a lot of inflammation. It does not do your stem cells good.
Gotcha. So your thoughts actually do create your reality, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. There's a self-fulfilling prophecy for sure, to a degree.
It's funny when my orthopedic surgeon who did my shoulders said to me, it's ironic that he invented the reverse shoulder, and he actually had 2 shoulder replacements himself. He's a bodybuilder himself. And he said to me, he goes, I can fix your shoulders. I can take out the damaged tissue, but I can't fix what caused that to happen to begin with, which is a lot of what goes on up here, the way you're wired. And
right.
So your thinking does definitely have something to do with, the manifestation of issues that we have in our body, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Science of Positive Thinking.
Oh, you did?
And my whole premise is that the human body is nourished not only by the food we eat, but also by the thoughts we think.
Interesting.
Those thoughts and feelings are chemical. Mm-hmm. They translate into neurochemistry, neuropeptides, and it affects every part of our being. So, you know this from teaching what you teach. I mean, it's a mindset.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. So where do you see the future of stem cells going at this point? How can we make them better? Because they don't work for everyone.
They don't work.
Some people have great results. Some people say they have no results. I know like guys who have gone to countries. I think I heard the story from my friend who knows Hulk Hogan. He went to some other country. They infused him with like 10 trillion stem cells, and he felt good for a week and then nothing. So how could we get to the next step, which is definitive, precise treatment that actually works, all the time?
Right. So who knows? I mean, it's the best question in the world, and believe me, everybody's working on it. So I think the key is this, like most things, the earlier you get it. So if you've got arthritic changes and you're grade 1, grade 2 mild, you're going to get a better result than if you wait till you're bone on bone. There's just no question. When I looked at your cartilage on that ultrasound when you got your stem cells, it was ragged.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you beat it up bad. So there, you may have just destroyed every chondrocyte progenitor cell in your body.
Yeah.
So stem cells can only stimulate what's there.
Right.
There's nothing there. It's too late.
Yeah.
So trying to identify at what degree of damage you want to go in and get it. Obviously, as the price comes down, people can come in earlier
Right.
and just do it preventatively. I mean, look, the ultimate would be preventative. TBI, you take traumatic brain injury. A lot of athletes get banged up in the head, boxers and football players and whatever. If we could do a dose of IV stem cells the day after a fight or the day after a head trauma,
Right.
you're going to prevent a tremendous amount of damage. And look, as the price comes down, I think we'll see more and more people just doing injections preventatively.
Here's the question. Are you doing injections preventatively on yourself?
No, I have to find someone who can do my stem cell extraction to get the stem cells. No, so the over-the-counter stuff, you can't get the numbers that you need for IV.
So you need very high amounts, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we do a mini liposuction here in the office. We suck off about 60 cc's of fat. We send it to the lab. We get the stem cells cultured. The problem is the FDA just shut that down, so everything's in limbo now. So we're using exosomes, and we're using over-the-counter umbilical cord products, not amniotic tissue, but umbilical cord connective tissue called Wharton's jelly that is pretty rich in MSCs. So they have a viable stem cell count that's up high enough to get you good results.
So you can't even extract people's fat anymore. When would this come about?
Well, a new place just opened up, but honestly, it's like one of those games in New York City where which cup is the ball under? It's like the FDA, they're just playing games, and I don't want patients to invest 10 grand to get a stem cell extraction and find out 2 months later they can't get any stem cells because the FDA shut it down.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of in a twilight zone right now.
There are clinics down in Mexico and South America, Panama, that are using what you called embryonic stem cells.
Well, not embryonic. They're using umbilical day zero, the first day of life. Call it day zero stem cells.
Okay.
Now, the benefit of that, Dave, is that they are really robust. So you take an MSC from an umbilical cord of a newborn healthy delivery, you're talking they will produce over 300 protein factors that can help with repair and regeneration. So, we take a stem cell from a guy like me who's in his 60s or a guy in his 50s, you may produce 100, 150 proteins. They're not as robust. So the ultimate will be to do what Neil Reardon's doing down in Panama, isolate umbilical day zero healthy baby delivery stem cells, find out which ones are the most robust, culture expand them, make them available on the shelf. So cortisone is going to be gone. I mean, 20 years from now, it'll be probably malpractice to give a cortisone injection. You're just going to give a stem cell injection.
Right. That's cool.
It doesn't destroy the cartilage. It doesn't destroy the tissue. It doesn't just cover the symptoms. It fully repairs. They're healing system cells.
So I basically, Doc, I blew it because my daughter was born 5 months ago. I could have saved the cord blood right there, and I could have sent it right to you. And I could have had a multitude of stem cells that I could have used as for regenerating everything in my body, pretty much.
Probably, yes.
Is that something that people are doing? Can you collect your kids? I know I could bank the cord blood for in case my kid ever had a problem like a leukemia and wanted to do a stem cell transplant, bone marrow transplant. But can you actually use those cord blood cells in this country for actually regeneration purposes?
So here's the problem. I do not know the answer to that, but I'll tell you the problem is that you're saving cord blood. So that blood is not the connective tissue. There are stem cells in there, there's no doubt, but they're freezing the blood. That blood then has to be processed. The stem cells have to be isolated, culture expanded, and the lab that stores the blood is not the lab. So you have to figure out how to get all that done. And I don't know who does that.
Do you see the future? We're going to be using the placenta and the cord and all this stuff like to extract more of this type of regenerative tissue as we learn more about it?
That's the future. That is the future. I mean, right now it's just medical waste. They throw it away. It's crazy, the richest source of it's the richest source of stem cells we have. It's unbelievable.
It's like the dairy industry. when they used to make cheese, they used to throw the whey in the garbage because they thought it was
There you
just
go.
junk. Now we use more whey than we use cheese, so it's for protein. It's
Exactly, exactly. That's the future for sure.
What do you think about, like, I guess you could say CRISPR or gene editing technology that they are using now to, like, fix genes and change genetics? I mean, where do you see that going? Do you see that being a big
Geez,
big
it's
boom?
not. It's honestly not my area.
Yeah.
I know about it, but it's fraught with potential, complications
Sure.
and problems. And I mean, obviously, in the lab, these things are tremendous sources of new information.
Right.
But I don't see it as having. It'll have applications, I think, in oncology and getting the genes to carry certain medicines to, produce the proteins, produce the viruses that can carry these genes.
Right.
So, I mean, it'll have great clinical application, but it's out of my expertise.
In people who have, like, paralysis, like, for instance, the bodybuilder Chris Dim, I know he's been going for a lot of extensive stem cells infusions down in Mexico. Do you think we'll ever see someone be able to walk who's maybe been in a wheelchair for 10 years? Are the stem cells able to regenerate tissue to that degree?
They are. There are reported cases of people who've been in wheelchairs that have gotten up, but it's slim and it's not consistent. And obviously, just like your shoulder, a lot depends on how severe the injury was, how soon afterwards you can get to it. But I do think, yes, we will see spinal cord injuries revolutionized from stem cells in the next 30 years. I think we're going to see a whole lot more people mobile and walking after spinal cord injuries and not end up quadriplegic.
So you think that the trick would be right after the injury, that's when they have to do the crazy infusions of the stem cells?
Yeah, clearly the sooner the better. That's correct. Although Reardon down in Panama is studying spinal cord injuries, and he has a case study in his book called Stem Cell Therapy. I think it's called A Rising Tide. But he talks about this one guy. I don't think they got to him for a year and a half, 2 years after, and
Wow.
it worked for him.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it would be a miraculous thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Now, if people want to come to your clinic and have you work on them, whatever, and do the stem cells, what's the process? Is it how long does it take? I mean, because you say you have to extract the stem cells, then how long does it take for them to culture them, and then before they actually come back and you could actually inject them with the stem cells?
Sure. So if the FDA releases their
Right.
stranglehold on freedom in America, we will be able to do that again. We do the extraction. The extraction takes about an hour, and then what we do is we send them off. It takes about 2 to 3 months to get the first vial.
Oh, okay.
And then after that, it only takes 2 to 3 weeks to order a vial.
Right. Interesting. And what do they store the stem cells for you?
They store them in liquid nitrogen, and that's how we keep our stem cells that are over the counter. Our product that we get here from umbilical cord, we just keep in liquid nitrogen. We have a tank of liquid nitrogen. So if it's just a joint injection, we have product available. People come in.
Got you.
They give us a few days notice, and just like you're in and out in an hour, half an hour, an hour.
Excellent. So
You do the ultrasound to guide it, and that's it. Yeah.
do you have a website? How can people get in touch with you?
My website is mdpersonal.com. And just normally what we'll do is we talk to, because I get a number of calls. I did a TEDx talk on this too, and I get a number of calls from that. So normally I'll just talk to someone on the phone first, see if they're a potential candidate, look at their x-rays. We don't bring them in. You don't have to come down to, see me for me to tell you, hey, you're not a good candidate. We can do that via Skype or on the phone, and I'll let you know, yay, nay, and then we go from there.
Sounds great. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of educate us and educate me on stem cells, and I know the audience will really appreciate it, and hopefully, some people out there who might, be resonating with what we're saying might get some great relief from this. And I believe what you say, though. I think one of the key components of making this work is your mental, I guess, outlook on the whole process. You know, they always say that, you know, we have the ability to unlimited heal all injuries, and people say, well, why haven't we seen miraculous healings more frequently than we do? And it's because people just don't believe that it can happen. And if you don't believe it, obviously, it's not going to manifest itself, you know?
Exactly. I agree with that 100%.
All right, Dr. Neil Neimark, check out his website. If you're in the California area or you want to go visit him, give him a call and go get healed, guys, because this is the future of healing injuries and I think of bodybuilding. What do you think, before we go, I want to ask you one more question. What do you think about the application of stem cell injections into muscles to increase muscle mass? Like, in other words, before I go to the gym, or maybe right after I get done doing bicep workout, I inject stem cells into my bicep muscle. Is there a possibility that can stimulate more growth?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, we know from animal studies. I mean, definitely animal studies show that if you inject MSCs into the muscle and you perform that eccentric exercise where it's, you know, more on the down, you know more about that than I do.
Yeah, it breaks down more the fiber tissues, yeah.
Yeah, so that will stimulate absolute new satellite cells in the muscle, produce new fibers. It's like, you know, drug-free increase in muscle mass.
There you go. It's cheating without the cheating, you know?
That's right.
I'm shocked that they haven't tried to ban that already. They banned blood doping. Next thing you'll know, they'll be saying that the cyclists are injecting stem cells into their legs after the race, you know, after each stage of the Tour de France. They'll have to, I don't know how they'll be able to detect that. But,
I don't know how they'll be able to assess the number of stem cells. I think there's going to be a long window before the technology.
You want to develop a whole protocol for that. You'll be a multi-millionaire. All the cyclists will be coming to see you. They'll be like, what are all these cyclists going to see Dr. Neimark for? He's got some recuperative therapy he's giving him. I don't know.
I'm going to work on that.
There you go. I just found a new niche for you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neimark, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks, Dave.
All right, guys, and that's going to take us to the end of another Supplement and Science Talk brought to you by Species Nutrition. I'm Dave Palumbo for Dr. Neil Neimark. We'll see you next time.